I've always been a big fan of Halloween. When I was a kid, that was, of course, because of the candy and the chocolate bars. As I got older and entered my teenage years, that changed. My love for the holiday remained, but that was because of the costumes and decorations. I had this one neighbor, you know the type, the one that goes all out on either Christmas or Halloween. Luckily for me, it was the latter. She'd put up statues of plague doctors, clowns, and whatever else she could get. It was awesome. And I couldn't wait until I was an adult so that I could decorate my front yard with skulls and jack-o'-lanterns. I'd probably disappoint teenage me, but money doesn't grow on trees. Still, even as I settled into adulthood, Halloween remained dear to me. Though admittedly, that's because I met my fiancée, Mary, on October 31st of our last year in high school. Before you ask, yes, we were wearing costumes. She wore a prom dress covered in blood, and I was dressed as the axe-wielding Jack Torrance. We soon bonded over our shared love of Stephen King, and that night a relationship started that would last for 7 years, 5 of which were dominated by our little Labrador, Shalon. They were the best years of my life. This Halloween was different. It started out normal, us cuddling up on the couch and watching kids in costumes start trick-or-treating a little early. Such is the nature of kids, as we all know. Halloween being on a Saturday gave them the excuse. Mary and I laughed when a group of superheroes, the Avengers, I think, showed up before the sun had even gone down. We answered the door a few times, smiling, handing out candy, the usual. But there was one group that stuck out towards the end. 3 kids, or, well, teenagers, really. Their costumes weren't costumes at all. One wore a plain hoodie with the hood pulled low and a bandana covering everything below his dark eyes. Teen in the middle wore a stiff potato sack draped over his face with the eye holes cut too big. The last and smallest of the group, a girl by the looks of it, had her face painted in a style reminiscent of a rock band like Kiss. "Trick or treat," the girl giggled, holding out a pillowcase full of sweets. They all looked at me the way a toddler looks at a monkey at a zoo. Something about them felt off, and I wanted nothing more in that moment than to slam the door shut and forget all about the holiday. Instead, like the moron I am, I grabbed a few Milky Way chocolate bars from the bucket next to the door and dropped them into the pillowcase. The girl's eyes lingered on my engagement ring, which usually made me happy. I talked people's ears off about the way I proposed to my fiancée, the way we met, and just how idyllic our life was. This girl didn't look at it with curiosity, however. Her eyes gleamed like those of a predator who'd just seen its dinner and found it to be delectable. "You married, mister?" she asked with a wry smirk on her face. After a brief and awkward pause, I replied, "Yeah, you kids have fun now." I closed the door, but not before catching the kid with the bandana tilting his head to look inside of my home. Shalon was at my side before long, wagging her tail and drooling all over my new and unfortunately expensive shoes. I cleaned them, though not before a tease from Mary. They weren't exactly shiny, but they would do for our date. Later, when it was time for our dinner reservations, we left the usual bowl outside. Take one, be honest. All that. We knew it would probably go all into a single person's bowl, but it was better than nothing. We were excited, dressed up a little nicer than usual, and headed to the restaurant. For a while, I forgot about those kids. But when we came back, the street was quiet. Most of the houses had gone dark, and our bowl was gone. Not just the candy inside. Someone had actually taken the shitty $2 plastic bowl with them. "Shit! At least they have left a note," Mary chuckled. I was less humored by the abduction of my favorite shitty bowl. I grabbed a piece of paper and went inside, where Shalon barked up a storm at the sound of Mary's keys jingling in the lock. As soon as we entered, we gave her the pets and belly rubs she deserved, as well as the leftovers of our meal. I lay the note on the table, only now noticing what was written in messy bold letters, like a kid would scrawl their first words in crayon. "Thank you," with a smiley face. That was all it said. Under it was a symbol, one I can only describe as an empty hourglass inside of a circle. "See? Polite little monsters," Mary teased, crumpling it and tossing it into the trash. I forced a laugh, but the image stuck with me. I tried to push it out of my head as we kicked our shoes off and gave Shalon her leftover steak. She wagged like she'd won the lottery, scarfing it down before immediately begging for more. Dogs in a nutshell. By the time we cleaned up and changed into something comfortable, we were as exhausted as Shalon after a long walk. I glanced out the window one last time, and nothing but the dark and empty street looked back. "Come on," Mary yawned, already halfway up the stairs. "Bedtime. Shalon's already claiming her spot." Sure enough, our dog was curled up at the top step, tail thumping lazily against the carpet. I gave the front door one last look. Locked. Bolted. Followed them upstairs. As Shalon made her way to our bedroom, she stopped dead in her tracks, then arched her back and growled at the door to our bathroom. Mary and I shared a look, and I could smell the fear in her breath mingled with mine. She backed up, nearly bumping into the hallway closet. As I put my index finger to my lips in the universal gesture for quiet, I crept towards the door. Mary stood shivering behind me, fear in her eyes. I knew how she felt. The hope of being wrong and the fear of being right. My hand rested on the doorknob, but when it swung open, there was nothing. Suddenly, Shalon spun around and barked at Mary. Wondering what the fuck was going on, I turned to Shalon and bent over to pick her up and calm her down. "Felix!" my fiancé screamed, just as I looked up to see why she yelled my name. Something crashed down hard against the back of my head, and I fell, sprawled out on the floor. I tasted copper, along with the very distinct feeling of my own molar piercing my cheek. Mary continued to scream, and I could only watch as the closet behind her opened. Two gloved hands shot out from the darkness, rag in hand. The rag, held like a garrote wire, was forced into her mouth, and she was pulled towards the closet. It was then that I saw the familiar white and black face paint of her assailant. Contrary to before, she wasn't smirking, but smiling gleefully from ear to ear. As Mary tried to fight back, someone else stepped over me. Shalon, oh sweet puppy that she was, leapt towards the teen who had bashed me on the head. Her teeth caught his heel and he yelped like a child. "Fucking piece of shit," he yelled, though it was muffled by the bandana he wore. Shalon did not relent. She tore and bit at his heel like he was a tasty bone. I heard heavy footfalls behind me before I even registered them. A heavy-duty work boot crashed into Shalon and she let go, startled. I could see blood and some flesh on the fur around her mouth. "Arg, what the fuck are you doing, dipshit? Kill it!" the injured kid yelled, clutching his bleeding heel. The potato sack kid kicked Shalon again and retreated behind the corner. He followed. Shalon yelped, a few thuds followed, and the kid emerged from the corner with a kitchen knife drenched in blood. Mary screamed, a deafened yammering, "No!" I stood, gazed, and saw Mary kicking the potato sack kid. Her arms were bound behind her and wrists, and she was gagged. I don't think any man or woman truly knows their own strength until they see what they love most being ripped away from them. That is when you see the true endurance of the human spirit. It was my body that helped me here, however. As I screamed, I ran at the kid with that stupid fucking sack over his face. My shoulder connected with his back, and I sent him tumbling into the wall with a muffled cry. My fist connected with the back of his head next. Then I turned around to face the girl struggling with my fiancé. She was not who I found. The hooded kid stood before me, weight resting on his good leg. More importantly, he held a baseball bat which was on a trajectory with my side. The blow landed with a thwack, and I fell down again. My consciousness waned, my vision dark at the edges. Mary's struggles died as her feet were bound at the ankles. "Get the fuck up, you pussies," Bandana Boy said between groans of pain. "Pussy? At least I didn't scream like a little bitch," Potato Sack replied, hand pressed against the spot where I'd punched him. They continued bickering, but I couldn't make out the words anymore. The darkness of unconsciousness embraced me with its cold arms. Mary whimpered. A distant jolt of pain erupted from somewhere in my gut. I tasted copper, thick as syrup, and it coated my mouth. Some fabric, a rag perhaps, had been shoved into my mouth and bound behind my head. There was a droning noise coming from my right. Voices. Laughter. It was the television. But how? We never forgot to turn it off. Not even when our eyelids drooped and our limbs felt as heavy as lead. The teens. I remembered. They must have turned it on. Why? I raised my head and opened my puffy eyes. The back of my head and my side throbbed in unison like a slow, calm heartbeat. Run. I had to run, yes. I dashed through the house and across the street. I'd scream for help, knock on every neighbor's door, wake every damn dog in the neighborhood until their barking and whining chorus woke their owners. I raised my right arm. It stayed in place. Something rough and tight restrained it in the wrist and elbow. I tried with my left arm, but it too was restrained. So were my legs. The old wooden armrest groaned whenever I tried to move, and the sound intensified as I arched my head. "Morning, sleepyhead!" A giddy girl's voice spoke in my direction. I opened my eyes. Mary was opposite me, tied to a chair the same way I was. Her mascara streaked down her face in black rivers. Her mouth gagged with the same rag as before. She looked at me with wide, fearful eyes. Her whole body shook as she sobbed against the fabric. And then I heard it. Laughter. Not nervous laughter, not even cruel chuckling like you'd hear in a cartoon. It was giddy, bubbling, and it came in bursts from the girl with the painted face. Slowly, she crept up to my fiancé until she stood right in front of her. She clapped her hands together. Boo! Mary jolted, screaming behind the cloth. This caused the girl to giggle some more, skipping around our living room like a happy child on Christmas. "This is great!" The girl beamed, spinning to the others. The boy in the bandana was sitting cross-legged on the floor, pouting. "Make it quick. Still gotta clean the fucking blood upstairs." "Hey, I'm savoring this. Not my fault you let yourself get bit," she said, turning her attention to something behind me. "Ah, there you go. And, is that a gift for me? You shouldn't have." She hugged him, then skipped over to Mary. Potato Sack followed her wordlessly, humming something that sounded like a lullaby. Bandana Boy still sat in a corner, though he'd now taken out a Milky Way bar and was eating it under the cloth wrapped around his face. He glared at the girl with spiteful eyes, as if he was trying to make her head explode through sheer force of will. Her head remained steadfast on her body, though, and she now stood behind Mary. Throughout this whole ordeal, she and I had been exchanging nervous glances. I hated to see her like that. I tried constantly to wring out my restraints. They were, however, far too tight, and my hope quickly plummeted. Hysterical mumbles came from both Mary and I as the girl violently wrapped something around Mary's neck. "Oh, quit crying! Will you shut him up?" She looked up at the potato sack as she tightened the thing around Mary's throat, drowning her cries. A blinding flash of pain shot through my cheek as Potato Sack punched me with tremendous force. The gaping pit of where my molar used to be cried in sharp, yet somehow also dull pain. He grabbed my chin with a gloved hand, blood running from my mouth onto the black leather, forcing me to look at him. He put his index finger to where his lips would be under the sack in the universal gesture for quiet, then threw my head back and released me. Mary sobbed and something jingled. It was then that I realized what the girl had done. "Looks good on you," she laughed. "Bit tight, though. Can you breathe?" Mary cried a muffled word that sounded like no. Shalon's bloody collar dug into her skin, making it more than a bit difficult to breathe. "What was that? Yes, you can?" the girl asked, leaning in closer. Mary thrashed around the collar, jingling with every movement. I tried to sprint at the girl with a face paint, but as soon as I moved, Potato Sack smacked me in the back of the head. I felt like my brain was a tennis ball being hit across the court, back and forth. Mary's chair tipped as she writhed, the back legs scraping the hardwood. She thrashed her body around like a rag doll, as if she was trying to tear herself free through sheer desperation, ropes biting into her skin until blood seeped through the burn marks on her elbows. The girl squealed with delight and clapped again. "Look at her go! Oh my god, she's like one of those inflatable waving noodle guys at a car wash! You're so funny, Mary!" Mary half sobbed, half screamed into the gag, muffled, high-pitched thrashing so hard I could hear the old wood creak beneath her. I, too, pulled with everything in me, jerking at my own restraints until the chair groaned and my wrists were raw. Nothing gave, not even a splinter. The girl crouched to bring her face inches from Mary's head, cocked like she was studying an animal at the zoo. "Aw, you're crying. I wish I could help you, but I can't. They She nodded towards the other two teens. Wouldn't let me. And I don't honestly think I'd want to. This is so much fun! She tapped Mary's nose and stood spinning away on her heels, humming along to the opening of Friends playing from the television. Bandana Boy finally stopped his hateful glaring, crumpling the candy wrapper in his fist. Fuck, you're making this take for fucking ever. Just slit her goddamn throat and be done. My fucking leg still hurts, and we don't have all night. The girl grasped dramatically, whirling on him. Excuse me, she said with an offended tone. Do you ever have fun with anything? This isn't like shoving Taco Bell down your throat before Mom gets home. This is art. Art my ass, Bandana Boy grumbled. You're stalling, always stalling, and I'm not cleaning her off if she pisses herself when you pull your ha-ha-boo shit. Language, the girl said sweetly, wagging her finger. We have guests. She gestured at us. Then she twirled and faced me, her painted face glistening under the TV's bright light. You look like you want to say something. You want to say something, Mr. Sleepyhead? I screamed 1,000 inaudible vulgarities into the gag, twisting with such force my chair rattled against the floorboards, veins bulging in my neck and forehead. My arms screamed fire, but the ropes only dug deeper. I felt my skin twist and tear under the strain, warm blood sliding down my arm and onto the armrest. Potato Sack stepped closer, his massive shadow rolled over me like a storm cloud. He didn't move quickly, didn't threaten. He didn't need to. Aw, don't be mean to him, the girl said, smacking Potato Sack lightly on the chest as though he were big brother and they were role-playing on the playground. He's cute when he's angry. Look at those eyes. They're like... She leaned towards me, peering close. Like a deer right before it gets thump, thump, thump on the hood. She mimicked the action, placing her hands in an imaginary steering wheel and going up and down with an aforementioned thumps. Mary writhed harder at those words, her eyes caught between desperation and fury. Her screams were raw, shredded, but they were turned to pitiful wet sobs, as if pushed through a meat grinder. Bandana Boy cackled. Yeah, you're the fucking Subaru. Language! She snapped again, but then suddenly, like flickering the lights on, she burst into giggles. Oh my god, you're funny when you're mean. The girl whipped back around, crouching low to Mary's trembling form. But you, she whispered, her voice sing-song now. You're the main event. She plucked the dangling tag of the collar, letting it tinkle like a bell. With her other hand, she gently reached up and slowly took the gag out of Mary's mouth. I watched, breath caught dead in my throat. Why? Mary sobbed, eyes downturned. The girl made a tisk, tisk, tisk sound and lifted Mary's chin. Because it's fun, she said, looking Mary dead in the eyes. Her grin grew into a manic smirk. Please don't kill us, Mary cried. The girl's smile stayed perfectly in place. Sorry, no can do. You see, this is all going to be over soon. The sun, the dark one, wills it. So, you're lucky, you won't live to see the rest. They're much worse than us. But you've got to start somewhere, right? As she saw the look of confusion on my fiancé's face, she decided that it'd been enough. She reached back up to pull the rag back into place, and her fingers came closer. Mary lunged forwards and bit down hard. With a pained yelp, the girl yanked the collar so hard the chair toppled. Mary crashed sideways with a hollow bang against the floor. A spray of blood shot through the air, covering Mary's face. 3 fingers rolled across the floor, blood streaming between the floorboards like tiny crimson rivers. The girl howled a cry of pain, which was quickly replaced by an animalistic growl. She clutched the ruined, uneven stumps of her fingers, blood streaming down her arm as if from a spring. You bit me! She screeched, the smirk she once wore now replaced by a furious snarl. You stupid little whore! She kicked Mary's chair, only managing to hurt her own foot. Mary coughed, spitting out blood that wasn't her own, her body convulsing as she tried to free herself again. The girl loomed, clenched, teeth bared. No more games! I'm gonna fucking kill you! Bandana Boy's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. Finally! He rose, looked at the blood spurting from the girl's fingers as if noticing it for the first time, then clenched his eyes shut in frustration. More blood to clean up. Potato Sack just stared down, letting the girl do as she wanted. but ready to jump in and end it quickly should things go south. The time bomb in my chest that was panic finally detonated, sending its shockwaves coursing through my veins. I knew it was coming. They weren't bluffing anymore. They were gonna kill my Mary. Hey! I roared into the gag, thrashing, rattling the chair so hard it screeched across the floor. Hey! I slammed the legs down over and over, splintering them into the hardwood floor. The girl snapped her head toward me, eyes wide and furious. Something hid behind those eyes, swishing and curling like mist behind her pupils. Shut him up! She hissed, then added, make him hurt like she hurt me. Potato Sack's hand clamped around my arm, squeezing until I thought the bone would snap and puncture my flesh. With his other arm, he gestured for Bandana Boy to bring him something. He dashed away, then emerged with a hammer. Mary screamed as she saw it, but the girl was upon her a moment later. Bandana Boy held me after handing Potato Sack the hammer, restraining me even further, though I think it was just so he could get a better look at what he was about to happen. Pain. This moment is when I truly understood that word, being so helpless, not only to help your own suffering, but also that of the person you love the most. The first blow came down and sent molten lightning up my arm, a wet, cracking, tearing from my hand. I screamed into the gag, the sound muffled, ragged. It hit me again and again, each hit landing with blinding white-hot light. I tasted bile. The jingling of Shalon's collar brought my senses back. The smell of my own blood hit in my nostrils before I could even see my bloodied hand. That was unimportant. On the floor, Mary wheezed, coughing, her eyes full of fright and panic. The girl's blood-soaked hands were wrapped tightly around her neck. Mary's eyes, her beautiful blue eyes, were bloodshot and full of tears. The girl leaned closer, her mouth opened, but before she could speak, Mary jerked free of her slick, bloody hands and whipped her head around. A disgusting thudding sound echoed from them as Mary's headbutt landed. The girl screamed, stumbling back. Bandana Boy groaned. That's why you fucking killed him, you dumb piece of shit! As the girl and Bandana Boy glared at each other, Mary writhed again. She strained every muscle in her body, and finally her chair collapsed under her. Wood splintered, and like a phoenix she was born anew. She lurched upward with one jagged shard of wood clenched in her still-bound hands. I lurched to help her, but the rope still bit into my skin. I writhed and pulled back, my mangled and broken hand slick with oozing blood, moved ever so slightly further than my other hand. That was it. This was hope. Writhing, fighting, and twisting, I worked the hand out of the ever slicker rope. It hurt. Fucking hurt like nothing else. But I had to. For her. I tugged my hand back with such force I thought it might sever at the wrist. Quickly, I tried to loosen the ropes on my other hand, but it proved futile. Seeing no other way, I slicked my wrist with the blood still gushing from my battered hand and started the process over. I was faintly aware of Mary fighting the two remaining teens, but I needed to get out of that goddamn chair if I was going to have the chance at helping her. When my arm came free, I made quick work of the ropes binding my legs. The ropes fell away from my legs as I ripped my gag off, the chair tumbling sideways as I kicked free. I scrambled, blood pooling on the hardwood, the hammer still lying on the smear of crimson at Potato Sack's feet. Then I looked up. Mary stood, her shard of splintered wood in hand, its tip dripping blood. Potato Sack lay sprawled on the ground, clutching his side. The girl and Bandana Boy were still circling her like vultures. The girl cradled her ruined fingers against her chest. You think you're clever, bitch? She spat, her voice a shrill mix of fury and delight. Think you can just fuck with my art and get away with it? Mary staggered backward, bound wrists still clutching the bloody shard. Her chest rose and fell so quickly it looked like her heart might explode. Stay the fuck away from me! She croaked, her eyes blazing. You know that hysterical look a cornered animal gets right before it leaps for its attacker's throat. Mary had that exact look in her eyes. She wasn't thinking. Soon enough, Bandana Boy had snuck up behind her. He took a large knife from between his waistband and readied it. I didn't shout. I gave no warning before I barreled at him in a full sprint. With no regard for my own life, I leapt towards Bandana Boy and caught him mid-air, both of us tumbling to the ground. I caught both Mary and the girl looking at us in surprise. Then I focused on the knife. It had landed 3 feet away from the boy and I lay on top of him. His bandana had come off and I saw a boy. He didn't look scary or even out of the ordinary. Shaggy blonde hair, thin lips, and unremarkable brown eyes. I had no idea who he was. He seized my moment of confusion and kicked me in the groin, then spit in my face. I fell down behind him. He crawled towards the knife, but I was faster. As my fingers curled around the hilt of the blade, I was atop him once more. I grabbed his head with both hands and raised it, then brought it down hard on the floor. The dull thwack that followed still haunts me at night, but all events of this night do, if I'm honest. His grip tightened. I brought his bloodied head up again, then smacked it into the ground with all the force I could muster. His fingers went limp. The scent of his piss-soaked pants assaulted my nostrils. Behind me, a fit of laughter erupted. I spun my head to see Mary had stabbed her piece of wood through the girl's already mangled hand. They were both laughing. Then the girl, with a face that now had 3 shades instead of 2, reached behind her and unsheathed a kitchen knife from her waistband and drove it into Mary's stomach. Mary's legs went limp. She groaned softly, then dropped to the floor. The white, black, and now red-faced devil whipped her head back in pure ecstasy as she laughed. She cut and severed our future, perhaps not as cleanly as she'd have liked, but when you butcher a carcass, you don't need a surgeon's precision when a butcher's bluntness will do the job just as well. I ran to her, screaming. She tried to swing the knife into my side, but either because of the blood loss or because she was still bathing in ecstasy, she'd grown sloppy. I flicked her hand away, and the knife flew from her grip. My mangled fist met her jaw, and I felt it pop and dislocate. Her laughter did not let up, not after the first punch, and after the second nor the third. It turned from a maniacal laugh into a sputtering gurgle, but it stayed long after I'd stopped counting the punches I threw. I didn't stop until my knuckles were covered in blood and face paint, and her face was little more than a pulp of flesh, bone, and gushing blood. Mary was still breathing when I ran to her, though softly. She lay on her back, blood pooling beneath her, hands pressed weakly against the wound. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of me collapsing beside her. I saw it on my knees. I held her in my arms. My broken hand hovered uselessly before finding hers, slick and trembling. "It's okay now, honey. I've got you. She shook her head, a distant smile on her lips. "Felix," she whispered, looking at my hand. In her final moments, she was more worried about my shattered hand than her own impending death. No, stay with me. You're gonna stay with me, okay?" I pressed my hand against her wound, uselessly, desperately. My tears fell onto her blood. "Mary, please!" Her hand twitched against mine, then slid limply away. Her chest shuddered once and then stilled. I held her, rocking her back and forth, like you'd rock a child to sleep. My tears fell on her cheeks. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Behind me, Potato Sack groaned. He wasn't dead. Life is, well, life. It can be so unfamiliar. I lost my wife, and yes, I call her my wife, even if I've never officially married. I lost my dog, and my hand, but that fucking little murderous piece of shit lives. They tried to get a motive, or, well, anything out of him. He didn't talk. From what I hear, he's catatonic, like a plant. I honestly have no idea how or why that is, but what that girl said to Mary keeps ringing in my ears. This is all gonna be over soon. The sun, the dark one, wills it so. You're lucky, you know. You won't live to see the rest. They're much worse than us. The symbol they drew on the paper, the circle with an empty hourglass inside. I've read of other incidents where it was found in the years since Mary's death. Some cult footage, a creature called a Fearin. It's even been linked to an AI. I don't know if I believe any of this, but like I said, that girl said some cryptic stuff, and I don't know what to make of it. This is simply my account of what happened on Halloween in 2019. Make of it what you will. I won't be reading your comments. It hurts too much. Whenever I close my eyes, I'm back on that floor, holding Mary, begging her to stay. I think often in those moments that I should have died there too. Maybe I did. Maybe my time will come when the dark sun rises and carries death upon the wind. Thank you so much for listening. We've been trying to improve the channel, so give us your feedback. Which direction are we going? Are we going in the right direction? Just let us know. And what was your favorite part of the story? And was this too much for Halloween? Or is this too generic? I'm trying to go outside of the box, but nothing ever fits. So we're back inside the box. But again, thank you for listening, as always. I'm so glad you were able to make it to the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. You could be the one that sends the channel to the moon. Don't miss the next grand adventure. So always, tune in next time. Have a good one.